May 1945. The hot New Mexico desert seemed far from the ravages of war in Europe. "100 tons of TNT, a rehearsal to scale and calibrate the power of an untested atomic weapon. Two months from this day, man would unleash the destructive power of a demon locked within the very fabric of matter and plunge the world into the atomic age. For the next 20 years, testing the power of the atomic bomb would hold the world captive by events shrouded in secrecy. Events set into motion 7 years earlier.
March 1938. Hitler invades Austria. The Third Reich begins to flex its military muscle. Later that year, German scientists discover fission of the uranium nucleus, bringing the Third Reich one step closer to discovering the secret of the atomic bomb. Fear of German research stimulated activity in the United States and England. Fear that German scientists could produce weapons of great devastation. In the fall of 1939, Dr. Albert Einstein wrote his now famous letter to President Roosevelt, explaining the urgency of work on uranium fission. Roosevelt, a man of action, moved swiftly. An advisory committee on uranium was appointed. German forces invade Poland, plunging the nations of Europe into a Second World War. A new branch of the Army's Corps of Engineers was established to administer work on military uses of uranium. Major General Leslie R. Groves, the man responsible for the Pentagon, was placed in charge of the project. On December 2nd, the first self-sustaining chain-reacting pile was successfully operated by Enrico Fermi. Fermi's success brought intense efforts between government and the private sector, creating huge industries for uranium separation in the town of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and for the production of plutonium in Hanford, Washington, at the shores of the mighty Columbia River. This tremendous effort forged the materials necessary for creating an atomic bomb. The first atomic bomb was assembled at Los Alamos, a secret laboratory in New Mexico. When Dr. J.R. Oppenheimer arrived to take charge, he began to surround himself with a galaxy of outstanding scientific stars. From Los Alamos came the bomb design and treatment of many theoretical problems. Yet many questions still remain unanswered. What are the secrets of this new source of power and destruction? Knowledge and information on all aspects of this new weapon are essential and can only be discovered by further testing.
The uranium gun weapon, or little boy bomb, was a simple design, and scientists were confident it would work without testing.
He had a very
The Fat
independent
Man,
mind
or implosion bomb,
and a
was a more
great
efficient
feeling what
design,
is coming.
using plutonium
He saw
instead of
years
uranium.
ahead that nuclear explosives would become important. He was a friend.
Inside
and I
the
helped.
very center of the
For
bomb was an
instance, I
initiator
drove him to an
surrounded by
important
a sphere
interview with
of
Einstein,
plutonium.
where
This sphere
Einstein
was
wrote the
encased within a
famous
set
letter
of
to
symmetrically
Roosevelt.
located, high-explosive
that
lenses,
started things
creating an implosion
I
which forced
myself
the plutonium into
was
itself,
interested
attaining
in
critical
theoretical
mass.
physics, in explaining atoms, molecular vibrations, knowledge, and more knowledge. I didn't want to. But then, Hitler not only swallowed up half of Poland, he invaded the West. And 2 days later, there was an invitation to a Pan American
The
Congress.
blast instantly
where
raised
Roosevelt,
temperatures
whom
to
I have
10
never
million
seen
degrees,
before,
releasing a
was going
force
to
of 1,000,000 pounds of pressure,
And he made a
vaporizing the
remarkable
tower
speech.
and all desert
How the
life
world
within a
is
half a
really
mile.
endangered by,
The intensity of light was
Hitler.
sufficient to cause temporary
among
blindness
other
to an
things,
observer
and at the
10 miles
climax,
away.
he said, you scientists are blamed for the weapons to be used. But
With a yield
I tell you
200 times greater than the
that
100-ton
if you
test,
now won't work,
the fireball created a crater
weapons,
nearly 1/2 mile
the
across
freedom of the world
and
will be
fused the
lost.
desert sand into a green glass,
Now, you know,
still
I had the
containing
feeling
traces of
that
radioactivity
Roosevelt was
50
talking to
years
me.
later.
I was there when the letter was signed that awoke his interest in nuclear energy. I thought I knew he was talking about nuclear energy. Of the 2,000 scientists there, I felt he was talking to me. Of course, not to me. But in that 20 minutes talk, my mind was made. I continued
Pearl
to
Harbor
like better
plunged
to
the
work
United
with
States
science.
into war.
But this had to be done. And as long as
For
it
3
had to be
years,
done, and I
gathering
could
momentum with
contribute,
each
I
small
did,
victory,
and was
our
never
forces
sorry
had
for having
conducted
done.
an offensive against the war-bloated empire of the rising sun.
The
Slowly,
uranium gun
island
weapon,
by island,
or
mile
little
by
boy
mile,
bomb, was a
and
simple
then with
design,
ever-quickening sweep,
and scientists were
the combined
confident it
land,
would work
sea, and
without
air
testing.
forces of the Allies drove
The
against
Fat
the
Man,
borders of that
or
empire,
implosion bomb,
forcing it back
was a more efficient
until late in
design,
1945,
using
only
plutonium
the bastions
instead
of
of
the
uranium.
Japanese home islands remained to be stormed.
Inside the very center of the bomb was an initiator, surrounded by a sphere of plutonium. This sphere
Ahead lay
was
the
encased
greatest
within a set
campaign
of
of all,
symmetrically located,
invasion of the
high
Japanese
explosive
homeland,
lenses,
and close
creating
in,
an
desperate
implosion
fight.
which forced the plutonium into
That this
itself,
fanatical enemy would
attaining
not
critical
quit
mass.
until her last fighting man had been driven from his cave and killed, had been established time and again by bitter experience.
The blast instantly raised temperatures to 10 million degrees, releasing a force of 1,000,000 pounds of pressure, vaporizing the tower and all desert life within a half a mile. The intensity of light was sufficient to cause temporary blindness to an observer 10 miles away. With a yield 200 times greater than the 100-ton test, the fireball created a crater nearly 1/2 mile across, and fused the desert sand into a green glass, still containing traces of radioactivity 50 years later.
Pearl Harbor plunged the United States into war. For 3 years, gathering momentum with each small victory, our forces had conducted an offensive against the war-bloated empire of the rising sun. Slowly, island by island, mile by mile, and then with ever-quickening sweep, the combined land, sea, and air forces of the Allies drove against the borders of that empire, forcing it back until late in 1945, only the bastions of the Japanese home islands remained to be stormed. Ahead lay the greatest campaign of all, invasion of the Japanese homeland, and close-in, desperate fight. That this fanatical enemy would not quit until her last fighting man had been driven from his cave and killed, had been established time and again by bitter experience.
The uranium gun weapon, or little boy bomb, was detonated over Hiroshima at an altitude of 1,800 feet, the height to achieve maximum blast effect. 3 days later, a Fat Man implosion bomb was detonated over Nagasaki. In Hiroshima, 70,000 people were killed in this catastrophe. Of its 90,000 buildings, only 60,000 were population. The implosion bomb dropped on Nagasaki took the lives of 42,000 people and injured 40,000 more. It destroyed 39% of all the buildings in the city. With a yield of 20 kilotons, similar to that of Trinity, this weapon would be considered a nominal atomic bomb and provide a blueprint for all future nuclear weapons.